be visible on YouTube, and we're here on Zoom. 128 people already. That went fast. Okay. Hey, Linda from Texas. Rose Perner from Mackie, Queensland, Australia. Catholic also from Australia. Jörg Gockeler. Hallo, Stuttgart. Hey. Ja, ich habe in Tübingen gewohnt, da bin ich aufgewachsen. So, yeah, York is very near where I grew up. So, Julia says, hello, glad to make it to the live for once. Heidi says, I finally get to attend live. Lydia says, hi from a very hot Lancashire. Sandy says, hello from hot and humid Missouri. And Nadia says, hello from Belgium. She says, hello from Germany. Susanne Balzer says, hi from New Jersey. Mary Brogue, hi everyone. Well, great, very international. It's always nice to see where everybody's from. So, Christiana says, would be good to see a map with all of the Ritter fans. Yeah, you know, in our courses, we used to have these big world maps where everybody could put a pin, you know, in their location. That was really, really neat to see. So, hey, Inga says, hello, good evening from Germany, home alone, so I can watch the live without bothering anyone. Yeah, very good. Wow. Linda Scarrett says, yeah, made it, got up at 4 a.m. only to realize it starts at 5 a.m. Good morning from New South Wales, Australia. Wow. BM says, hi from smoky Calgary. I'm so sorry that you still have to deal with fires and smoke. Hey, Dagmar, Sigmaringen, hey, not so far away from where I used to live. And wow. All righty. Wow, very cool. Vicky Robain, Algarve. Hey, you're close to where we are. Where are you in the Algarve? Very cool. So, Sue says, hi, Thomas. Greetings from California. Thank you for all your help making progress on your on the bit issue with Santi. That's awesome. Oh, so Vicky is in Albufeira. Well, we're in Lagos. It's not far away. We're almost neighbors. Shelley DeRoy from Cape Town, South Africa. Really, we're everywhere. Yeah, very good. Okay, so today we have the exercise for you. Let me see, we have the keynote, but so I'll share the picture here. First of all, did you do the experiment? The little recap of day one, we showed you this little experiment where you sit on the edge of a chair or a stool and have somebody pull you off, basically, and with two reins or lunge lines, and yeah, so it would be interesting to see if you did that and what observations you could make. Then next question, did you download the workbook and answer the day one questions? Then today, you know, we want to show you a practical exercise you can try with your horse. And that's a super important exercise. It's on the one hand, very simple, very basic, so that you can do it with pretty much any horse, even with fairly green ones. But it's an extremely important one. It's brilliant, really. It comes from the Spanish riding school. It involves the so-called first test of the inside hind and the first test of the outside hind. It's a whole brilliant system in itself. This exercise helps you establish the circle of aids. It helps you establish a rein contact. It helps you move the horse from your inside leg into the outside rein, and then, you know, start that whole energy circuit. And you can use it to shorten the reins if they are too long. So here is that exercise. So it's very simple, 20-meter circle. Let me see if I can actually, if I can get out. I want to use these tools, annotate, mouse. Actually, let's see if that still works when no, it doesn't work anymore. It's a keynote thing. I can't, you know, you can't see the cursor when you hit play. But so hopefully now you can see it. So you write your 20-meter circle on a single track, and you can do this actually in all three gates, right? Then on the open side of the circle, where you have a little space, you enlarge. In the Spanish writing school tradition, under Podhaisky and before Podhaisky, this was called the first test of the inside hind leg, enlarging the circle. And the way, you do it when, as a formal exercise, you enlarge one horse's width, that you move your horse out one horse's width within the span of 2 strides. When the inside hind leg is up in the air, you shift your weight a little to the outside, and your inside leg asks the horse to follow your weight. So when the inside hind is up, outside hind is down, you enlarge. So there's a little bit of sidestepping involved in this exercise. This brings the inside hind leg more under the body. In a way, it shortens the distance between hind legs and front legs, and it brings the inside legs closer to the outside legs. It also transfers the weight to the outside hind, which helps you create a better bend, right? Shifting the weight to the outside, engaging the inside hind allows you to move the inside hip of the horse more forward. And that's how you can develop the bend through the entire spine. So after these 2 strides of the enlarge, you apply 2 half holds with the outside rein when the outside hind leg is on the ground. So it's rhythmically easy because you give all your aids when the outside hind is down, inside hind is up. You can even say it out loud as you're riding it. You go enlarge, slow down, right? And with these 2 half holds of the outside hind, you want to create a little bit more flexion of the outside hind. And since most horses tend to rush rather than, to be too slow, you can use it to hold that outside hind leg on the ground a little longer, which slows down the tempo a little bit. So it's a 4-stride sequence, right? First 2 strides, you enlarge from your inside leg. Second 2 strides, the third and fourth stride, you half hold with the outside rein. You can also add a little pressure on the outside stirrup at the same time. So you send your own body weight through the outside hind into the ground. And with the outside rein, you use the weight of the horse's head and neck, and you add that to your own body weight and send the combined weight of the horse's head and neck and your body weight into the outside hind. And that weight aid flexes the outside hind. So you can start the circle of aids by doing that. Now with the enlarge, you ask the inside hind to move forward and move out. So the horse reaches for the outside rein. The horse basically stretches into the outside leg and rein. The outside rein can then catch that energy impulse from the inside hind and use it to flex the outside hind leg. And then, once you've done that enlarge, slow down, you could move the horse back to your normal circle line. So turn the shoulders a little bit back onto the first track, right? So the original formal exercise involves moving over one horse's width. So you go from the first track to track 0, so to speak, on the outside, right? And once the horse knows the exercise, you can make it more subtle. So you can use your inside leg and your weight to transfer the weight to the outside pair of legs without actually moving over. You just bring that inside hind leg a little closer to the outside, a little more under the body, but you don't need to actually leg yield out, right? So you just shift the weight, bring the inside hind leg under, and then you half fall. So the enlarge is more in your mind and in the horse's mind. And when you feel like the horse is now shifting the weight, then that's all you really need. And then you can apply your half hold. And then you will have a straighter horse and more balanced, more closed horse, as they say in German, ein geschlosseneres Pferd, with more weight on the outside hind. And you would be in a good position to canter. So that's one of the very typical old school setups for canter depart enlarge, slow down, and canter, you know. So it's extremely effective. Something to look out for when you enlarge is that the horse's hips and shoulders move out at the same time. So you don't want the haunches to move out faster or farther than the front legs, because otherwise the horse would lean on the inside shoulder and he would get crooked and maybe even look to the outside. You don't want the shoulders to move out faster than the haunches, because otherwise the horse would lean on the outside front and probably overbend. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. In the hollow direction, of course, the horse will tend to move the shoulders out a little faster than the haunches. So you have to guard a little with your outside knee and rein. So you may also have to bring your outside hip more forward and slow the outside front leg down with your outside knee and rein. And with the inside leg, you may have to accelerate that inside hind and make it really step out a little bit more. When you're going in the stiffer direction, the horse will do the opposite. He will try to lean on the inside shoulder and he may try to swing the haunches out. So going in the stiffer direction, you may have to be a little careful with the inside lower leg, but use your inner thigh instead. And then use the inside knee and rein when the inside front is up. So when the inside hind leg is in the air, you can use your inner thigh going in the stiffer direction. You kind of try to get the rib cage to swing out more, and you move your pelvis a little bit out. And then when the inside hind is down, inside front is up, you can use inside knee and rein to move the shoulder out if you feel like the shoulders are moving too slow, you know. So that would be a correction. If the horse moves the hips and shoulders out at the same speed, then you don't really have to do anything. You just let your pelvis swing out, use your inner thigh and maybe a little bit of lower leg. And if the horse stays under you, moves out, then that's good. Then you don't need to do anything else. And then you catch him with your outside leg and rein, half fold into the outside hind leg. Yeah, and then you're ready to do something else afterwards. So it's a great way to improve the bend. In the stiffer direction, it's a great straightening exercise. Like I said, it's a good way to begin the circle of eights. It's a good way to get your horse off the inside rein. If your horse leans on the inside rein and counter bends, then with this enlarge slow down, you can create the bend and make the horse light on the inside rein. In the stiffer direction, if the horse was really leaning on the inside rein, you could half fold with the inside rein into the outside hind leg instead of half folding with the outside rein into the outside hind leg. So the half fold with the outside rein into the outside hind is called the first test of the outside hind leg in the Spanish riding school tradition. Half folding with the inside rein is called the second test of the outside hind leg. So both are legitimate. You can reach, in a sense, all four legs with each rein. You can send the weight of the head and neck into a leg that's on the same side as the rein, or you can send it into a leg that's on the opposite side. So if the horse leans on the inside shoulder, your inside rein can transfer the weight of the head and neck and the inside shoulder to one of the outside legs. It could be the outside front, could be the outside hind, right? Here in this exercise, we're not talking to the front legs, we're talking to the hind legs, right? We want the inside hind to engage more, we want the outside hind to flex more. So, but sometimes it's necessary to talk to the front legs because they leave the line of travel, right? If the front leg escapes in or out, you have to do something about that. So, yeah, so that's it already, right? You can, and maybe first time you do it, ride it at the walk until you get a sense of where to go and you get a feel in your body of, you know, how it feels, where the energy flows, what to do, and then do it in the trot, right? In the trot, these tests of the hind legs are usually the most effective. And when it feels easy in the trot, you can do it in the canter as well, right? If you enlarge, you bring the weight to the outside hind, and then when you half fold into the outside hind, that's when the withers come up in the first beat of the canter stride. So you can get a more uphill canter essentially by enlarging and then half folding into the outside hind. So you can create a much more uphill posture. All right. Yeah, I think that was the end of our keynote. So, oops, now I have to get out of this. And stop share, see? Okay. Yeah, any questions? Let me just check. There were some more comments. Kat says hi from Czech Republic. Hi. Cornelia says hi from Germany. Wow, Sumari says hi to everyone from Swakopmund, Namibia. Wow, that's rare that we have somebody from Namibia. That's awesome. Okay, the others I think I had seen. Catonic says yes, surprisingly effective. Yeah, it's so simple, and you think, oh, no big deal. You know, it's easiest thing in the world, right? But yeah, it is amazing how effective it can be. It in a way this gives you a little bit the what, why, how of that inside leg to outside rein that everybody talks about, right? Everybody tells you to ride from the inside leg to the outside rein, but nobody really tells you how to do it, and nobody tells you why would I do that? What's the point? You know, why is that a useful thing to do, right? But here, this exercise gives you that information. It fills in the blanks, basically, you know, and maybe helps you make sense of stuff your other trainers have told you in lessons, right? Linda Scarrett says yes and yes. Wendy Rockwell says tried to do it on my own, but have nobody living with me, and there was no one at the barn either. Yeah, it's hard to do the little homework from yesterday all by yourself. That's a little challenging. Yeah. Alex says, is this the exercise from the blog, shorten the reins? Can't remember what exercise in there, but could be. I mean, this enlarge, slow down is something we have in all of our courses because it's so elementary. It's so important. It has such an important function, you know, and it does so many things that yeah, we have it in the Canter course, in the what, why, how course, and straightness course, probably everywhere. You know, it's yeah, so useful. Right? So it could be that I mentioned it in the blog. Yeah, Michelle King says, did the exercise really good to see how secure you are when you keep your elbows close to your hips, even with my T-Rex arms? Not my expression, but someone commented on my post that she had T-Rex arms, and I thought it was hilarious. Yeah, it is funny. Yeah, the little homework exercise from yesterday that reminds me of an anecdote that one of the 19th century authors was writing about. It may have been Otto von Monteton, or may have been Peter Spohr, Die Logik in der Reitkunst. He was saying that, yeah, when he was young and he was a young officer in the cavalry, there was an officer who made bets with his comrades for a bottle of champagne that they would not be able to pull him off the horse if, you know, he had held lunge lines or something and they held the other lunge lines. He said, I bet, you know, basically, I bet you, you know, a bottle of champagne, you will not be able to pull me off the horse. And he won every time. And that's the secret, basically. That's the exercise. If you connect your pelvis to your elbows, nobody can pull you off the horse. If somebody pulls hard enough, the horse will go down, you know, the horse will fall over before you come off the horse. You know, that's how powerful this is. You know, so yeah. And Katie McGatchy says, and there, isn't it hilarious that we were just talking about the benefits of this exercise today? Yeah. And Alicia Kirstedt says, I have a question already. Would love any tips for learning how to time your aids more fluently. I know it takes practice, but I find it very difficult. Yeah, timing of the aids requires that you feel where the horse's legs are, right? You can feel the touchdown of the hind legs in your seat bones. You can also feel the touchdown in your fingers. It's like a little pulse. Like if you put your fingers here on an artery, you feel this very, very light little thump, you know, in your fingers. And when the hind leg reaches forward, it fills your rein on that side. And when it touches down, you feel pretty much the same thing that you feel when you put your hands on an artery or your fingers on an artery. to practice this exercise, all the aids are given when the outside hind is down, inside hind is up. So you can focus on feeling the outside hind touching down. So you feel a bump in your outside seat bone, you feel a little impulse in your inside hand. You can also focus on the swinging of the rib cage, right? This rib cage swings towards the side where the hind leg is down and away from the side where the hind leg is coming up and forward. So when the rib cage moves away from your inside leg and towards the outside, that's when the inside hind is up. So that's another way of finding the same moment in time. Of course, when this is all too much and too complicated, you could post in the trot, post on the wrong diagonal. So you sit down when the outside hind is down, and then simply when you sit down, inside leg, outside rein, every time you post, right? So you could trot and either sit the trot or post on the correct diagonal. And then when you come to the open side of the circle, post on the wrong diagonal. And then as you sit down, and large, slow down, that's probably the easiest way to do it at first. And then, you can, study how to feel the footfalls in your body. And you can always look down, right? When the outside hind touches down, the outside shoulder blade will go forward. In the walk and the trot, when the hind leg is down on one side, the front leg on the same side will have to lift up and move forward to get out of the way, So that's another way. And of course, in the trot, it's diagonal, very simple. When the outside hind is down, the inside front is down. So you can look at the inside shoulder. When the inside shoulder comes back, the outside hind is down. So as soon as the outside shoulder goes down and starts to come back, drive with your inside leg, half hold with the outside rein. So that's also, one way of figuring it out. Yeah. In Cynthia cases, I frequently use this one as one of my warm-up movements to assess the mobility of the outside hip and leg. Yeah, exactly. It shows you if the outside hind leg is connected to the ground and to the weight and to the rein. Basically, you can connect the outside rein to your weight, to the rein and to the ground. And she asks, this first test is direct rein of opposition. Well, the first test of the outside hind is a half hold on the outside rein when the outside hind is down. It might be slightly different than the French system, but it's a flexing rein, right? It asks the outside hind leg to flex, right? There are rein aids. You can use the rein also to ask the hind legs to move over, right? You can support the sideways driving leg with the rein to move the hips sideways, but in this case, you just want to fold the hind leg a little bit. Oops. Canter says, you're going so fast, I'm having trouble following you. I'm sorry, I've explained this stuff so many times. It could be that I go a little fast over these things, but in the PDF, there should be an explanation for it as well. And so you can read it, and you can watch the recording again. And Carla Powell says, I tried this exercise today and my horse was very unhappy about it. To the stiffer side, I was wondering why it had a negative effect on her, not wanting to weight her weaker left hind. Yep, most likely. Or maybe I was using too much calf, was unsure what her blockage was because it was a whole body blockage. Horses often don't like to put the weight onto the leg of the hollow side. That's typically the weaker one, and some horses don't trust that leg. They think that they will fall over or the leg will break off or something. So they might lean against it. It could be that your weight was moving in the wrong direction. It's a possibility. In order to move out, you want to move your pelvis a little more to the outside, let your pelvis swing out when the ribcage swings out, and put weight onto the outside seat bone a little bit more, right? So that your weight flows through your outside seat bone into the outside hind, and then your inside leg asks the horse, follow my weight, stay under my weight. If you sit on the inside hind leg, then could be that your horse follows your weight and wants to fall in, and then your weight tells the horse go in, and your inside leg tells the horse go out. So there's a conflict. Very often when the horse is resist against leg aids, especially in any kind of lateral movement, it's because the leg and the weight are telling the horse opposite things. Like the weight tells the horse go right, the leg tells the horse go left, and then the horse doesn't know what to do, right? And weight aids are more basic and they're more natural in a way to the horse. The horses understand weight aids right away, whereas leg aids are something that has to be explained and taught to the horse. And if there's ever a conflict between the weight and the leg, the horse will tend to listen to the weight and follow the weight and go against the leg and ignore the leg. That could be. So watch that when you enlarge, that you're not leaning to the inside, trying to shove the horse out, because that might end up setting, up a conflict for the horse. Really stay vertical in your upper body and just swing your pelvis up. So you think of shoulders, pelvis, spine, everything moves out together. You might want to stretch your outside leg back and down more. That can help to channel the weight or let the weight flow into the outside hind leg. Another possibility is that you locked up in your body somewhere. It's like as you move out, especially when you feel like the horse doesn't really want to go over there, could be that you tightened your butt cheek or started gripping with the calf or clenched your hamstrings. And if you tighten your glutes or any part of your leg muscles, or you lock up your hip joint, you're blocking the movement of the horse. And some horses are very allergic to any kind of clamping, gripping, with the leg, or some horses just don't like calf pressure, and if you put any pressure with the calf on, they will hold their breath and they will push the rib cage against that calf. That's a possibility. And then, everything shuts down basically. So you may have to check how much muscle strength you're using. And you may have to completely let go, relax the leg, or give the aid and then completely relax the entire leg from your hip joint, from the glutes all the way down to your ankle. Everything has to be completely slack after the aid. And that usually helps. Like, be very clear with your weight. Relax your leg maybe before and after the aid, because you can relax the leg, give a quick nudge, relax again. So that you don't contract your leg, you don't start squeezing and gripping. And, some people, it's sort of human instinct actually, when the horse doesn't respond right away, that you don't take the calf aid off because the horse hasn't responded, and then you just intensify and put more pressure on them. It's what I used to do until I figured out that it doesn't work, right? And then I try to teach myself to relax, like relax, touch, relax. Short driving aid, a quick nudge, and relax the whole leg all the way down. And that usually works better. And then if you feel like the horse isn't listening to that leg aid, you could tickle a little with the whip, give a little touch with the whip behind the leg, and that might help. So could very well be that there's either tension somewhere in your body, or that there's a contradiction a little bit between weight aids and leg aids, and then once you fix those two issues, the horse will probably move over a lot better. And Christiane says, will the forehand lift up in the trot too? Yeah, when you enlarge, slow down with a slow down. If you half hold into the outside hind, the horse should grow a little bit, should lift the withers just a little bit more, because the outside hind leg then flexes and supports the body mass for those two strides more. Yeah, Diane Butler says, will this exercise help slow my rushing mare? Yeah, you should be able to use that. It may not be enough. During the half halts, the tempo should slow down a little bit. It could be that she speeds up again right afterwards. In that case, you could add a little stirrup stepping in the outside stirrup, and it could be anything like a front, or rear, front, rear. So in other words, step into the stirrup lightly when the front leg or the hind leg is on the ground, and then you can make patterns out of that. You start with the front leg or start with the hind leg, I would end, maybe with a hind leg. So you could also go front, rear, rear. So step 3 or 4 times in a row. And it could be a number of different patterns that draws the weight to the outside, off of the inside shoulder. You can slow the tempo with a stirrup pressure. You can use stirrup pressure by itself. You can add the rein at the same time, so that you're adding the weight of the horse's head and neck into your own weight. And so you can slow the tempo down on a rushy horse by stepping a little bit, then do the enlarge, slow down, step again. And of course you could repeat the enlarge, slow down too. If you don't go all the way out, you can, if you're next to the wall, you can enlarge virtually, so to speak. So just enough so the horse shifts the weight to the outside pair of legs, and then slow down. And when you have space on the outside, you can enlarge. Like if you're opposite a corner on the circle, you can enlarge a little because there'll be a little space, right? So you enlarge from the circle line towards the corner line, right? Corner line, circle line, they're distinct. And you could move the horse from the circle line onto the corner line. That's an interesting little exercise too. So your circle develops little bulges in a way as a result. Yeah. Hey, Melanie says hi from Barbados. Really enjoying this. Wow, Barbados, that's unusual. And yeah. Yeah, Linda Scarrett says, at what point is the horse ready to go on the bit? My boy is 6 years old and has been ridden on and off due to injury. I have not started to ride him on the bit. So when do you ask young horses to start to ride on the bit? Basically right away. Because on the bit is a function of balance and straightness, right? We encourage the horse, or try to help the horse to find his balance first at the lunge line without us, then under the saddle. And we try to align the horse on the line of travel. We try to make the circle round. We try to put his feet on that line and help him move in a steady tempo. And as he does that, he will relax and come on the bit, right? And if for some reason he's still, not on the bit, you can try a little flexing, releasing with the reins. But yeah, you don't force it, of course. You don't demand it in that sense, but you help the horse get into balance, find the right alignment, and then when they're balanced and they're aligned on the line of travel, they start using the back more and more. They start releasing the pull more and more. So they should be able to go on the bit, So of course it will be, there'll be irregularities. Sometimes he'll come off the bit, he'll lose balance, he'll get distracted, he'll look at something, he'll fall in, he'll fall out, because young horses are just like that. And then you just try to bring him back to, here is a circle line, here's the tempo, put your feet on that line, and then, he gets round again, and then he loses it, and then you bring him back, and so on. So it's, it's not perfect or consistent with a young horse, but we try to get him to, stay on the line more and more, keep the tempo more and more, find his balance more and more, and so on. Yeah. Good. So Lydia says, after you have enlarged and slowed down, then picked up the canter, do you turn the shoulder, or is turning the shoulder if you stay in the same gait? Yeah, I mean, if once you've enlarged, you kind of have to get back to the original circle line, otherwise you would bump into the wall, right? So yeah, you can enlarge, slow down, canter, and then bring the horse back to the original circle line. But it usually sort of happens automatically in a way. Yeah. So yeah. And Candace says, good, you drop these little tips, and they're very important. Good. Good, I'm glad. Yay, Chris Danko says this exercise really helped my horse start his canter. Yeah. Yeah, for the canter, it's almost foolproof. And if you have a horse that sometimes picks up the wrong lead in the stiffer direction, you can modify the exercise, trot, enlarge, and then instead of giving 2 half halts to slow down or shorten the stride, you give 3 half halts, and the third half halt stops the horse. That is half halt, stop. So you stop into the outside hind. That really transfers the weight, and the horse then has to sit a little on the outside hind. And if you do this 2 or 3 times, the horse knows the pattern. Here on the open side, we enlarge and we stop. And then when you feel that the horse is getting it and he's doing it, then you enlarge, slow down, and then the horse is expecting the third half halt for the stop. And instead of giving the third half halt, you give the canter aid. So mentally, he's already sitting down and preparing for the halt. And then when you give the canter aid, he lifts up out of, it's like doing a squat, right? With the outside hind, he squats down, and then you say, oh, never mind, I changed my mind, I want to canter now. And then out of that squat, he has to lift into the canter, and he can't run into it, right? So you usually get a very nice uphill canter depart, and you get the correct lead from that. Ingrid says, how do you learn to be fast enough to feel exactly where each leg is? I find this very tricky. Any suggestions? It's a process to learn it. I mean, like I said, you listen for certain signals from the horse, right? When the hind leg touches down, there's a bump under your seat bone on that side. And you just have to spend some time walking or trotting and feeling for that bump, or there is this little impulse that you feel here through the rein in your fingers when the hind leg touches down. Try to feel for that. It helps to have somebody in the arena who tells you maybe now, or you call now when the hind leg touches down, for example, and the person on the ground tells you yes or no. You got it right or you got it wrong, right? If you have a mirror, you can look in the mirror and then feel, what am I feeling in my seat and my reins? And when that certain hind leg touches down, you just pick a hind leg, watch when it touches down in the mirror. What am I feeling in my reins? What am I feeling in my seat? What am I feeling in my thighs, knees, and calves from the rib cage? That sort of thing. You can always extrapolate from the position of the front legs. You can glance down at the shoulders and see, what happens when this shoulder goes forward. What am I feeling, on the same side in my seat bone, for example? Or when that shoulder goes back, what am I feeling in my seat bone or my leg, my thigh on that same side? So you teach yourself to feel, right? When it's sunny, you can look for the shade, of the horse's legs, which you can see which leg touches down, especially afternoon or morning, right? When the sun is not so high in the sky. So you actually have, a big enough shadow. That's a possibility. And it just takes time. It took me a while. I studied that stuff obsessively, but it takes a few months maybe before you really feel it. Vicky Scott says, how does that state 2 help with shortening the reins, Mr. Bit? Well, with the enlarging, you're bringing the inside hind closer to the front legs, right? So you're shortening the wheelbase. When the wheelbase shortens, the reins would be slack, right? Because as the wheelbase shortens, the hind legs come closer to the front legs. The horse will start to lift the withers and elevate the neck and flex the neck a little, and then you can pick up the slack, right? So you can do this. Engage the inside hind legs, sit on the hind legs, pick up the slack a little bit. So you could use that to shorten the reins. Wendy Rockwell says in riding, inside leg to outside hand, it feels like my horse is doing that exercise, very special feeling. Yeah, it's what it is basically. And like I said, you can do it invisibly, you enlarge only in your mind. You're bringing that inside hind more under the body and closer to the outside, but you're staying on your circle line. You're not moving over. That's, and then you catch it with the outside rein and connect it to the outside hind. That's essentially what your average riding teacher has in mind when he says right inside leg to outside rein. But in order to teach the horse or to teach a student who has never felt it, it makes sense to exaggerate the enlarge. So the horse really moves over, right? So he really comes into your outside leg and rein. And then you can connect the outside rein to the outside hind. Also, if your horse doesn't like to go into the outside rein, if your horse always looks a little to the outside and the outside rein is sort of slack, then enlarging will bring him into the outside, and eventually he'll stretch the neck on the outside and the rib cage, and then he'll make contact, and then you can half hold with the outside rein. Okay, Heather Parnham Wilson says, yesterday's exercise was an amazing difference. It really made me realize just how much more connected pelvis to elbows I need to be. Simple exercise and extremely effective. Yeah. It's a good illustration, right, of that connection. Yeah, Elaine Singleton says, thank you, that's really helpful to post wrong. And yeah, posting on the wrong diagonal or switching diagonals can be super effective sometimes. And then Hope Leeson says, thank you and greetings from Rhode Island. I tried the circle exercise today and eventually went pretty well at the trot to the right, but we struggled more to the left, lots of inside leg. Yeah, if the horse is, depends, right? I mean, on the stiffer side, it's usually more effective, but it could be that the horse is initially a little reluctant to move out, especially if the horse doesn't really trust his outside hind leg. If the horse thinks that the outside hind is not strong enough to support the weight, then he will try everything to keep leaning on that inside shoulder. Yeah, and Hope says, I think the half hold with the inside rein might be really helpful as my horse really leans into his left shoulder. Yeah. And you can add stirrup stepping into the outside stirrup that helps with a weight transfer. And especially if you rock back and forth between front leg and hind leg, then that dissipates the fear. Sometimes horses then get scared because they think their hind leg isn't strong enough. They think it'll break off. And if they feel trapped somehow, like you're really shoving the weight onto it and it'll never go away, then they get claustrophobic and they fight. But if you just rock the weight a little bit, front, rear, front, rear, front, then the moments where the outside hind has to support the weight are short, right? And the horse starts to realize, this is scary, but it's only a half a second, and I can live with that. I'll survive, right? And then it comes and it goes, it comes and it goes, and there's nothing for the horse to brace against. If you do anything that's static, any static weight distribution, static leg pressure, static rein pressure, the horse will fight. Or he'll lean against you. But if it's rhythmic, if it's a pulse, that comes and goes and you move, everything is fluid, everything is dynamic, then there's never anything that the horse can really fight against or throw his weight against, right? So, because the horse is bigger and heavier than we are, so if the horse can use his weight against us, we lose. We have no chance, right? We can only use, the dynamics of the movement and the combined body mass of us and the horse to influence certain legs, So Sarah says, that's exactly what I was going to ask. Does the ribcage swing to the outside when the inside hind is off the ground in walk? Yep. Not just in the walk, it's in the trot too. And she says, is that when you apply your inside leg? Yes, exactly. When the ribcage swings to the outside, the inside hind is in the air. That's when your driving aid will have the best chances of coming through. Exception would be if the horse is too slow and keeps the hind legs on the ground too long, then you would drive already a little bit, a split second before the rib cage moves out, to make the hind leg lift off sooner, and then you quicken the step of the hind leg. The rib cage swings like a pendulum, right, in and out. And if your legs are in the right place and they're relaxed and hanging, the rib cage will touch the inside calf and they will touch the outside calf. And you can feel it, how it bumps into your calf and it swings away, bumps into the other calf. You could listen to that little gentle bump of the rib cage into your calf and just return that. It's like an impulse that comes from the rib cage into your calf, and then you return that impulse and you send the rib cage back over. That's maybe the easiest way to do it. So then you drive at the moment where the inside hind is completely extended on the ground behind you and about to lift off. And that's often, a good moment because it capitalizes on the natural movement of the horse. It uses the natural movement of the horse and just sends the natural impulse from the hind leg and the rib cage back to the other side. And the horse almost drives himself when you do that. Yeah. Katie McGatcher says, I found this exercise so helpful for Linda, a mare that is often stiff in the ribcage. When we're able to help her bend through her ribcage, she always lowers her head and comes on a bit. Exactly. Could these two things, flexibility of the ribcage and flexibility of the pole, be directly related? Yes, they are. Horses that are very stuck in the ribcage typically drop the back and invert and tighten the underneck muscles. When you get the ribcage to swing and to let go, usually they can lift the back and relax the pole and they come on a bit. So yeah, mobilizing the ribcage is important. It's something to listen for and feel for. What's the ribcage doing? What's the back doing? And then you try to maybe increase the swinging of the ribcage essentially. So let me look at the Q&As, a whole bunch of questions here. Sue Barton says, I tried this exercise with my horse and she moved too quickly and too much on the left rein, also sped up. When I tried to steady her, she really tried to pull the reins. Should I try to be a little stronger? Walk was fine, but trot and canter on the one side was a challenge. Should I just keep it at the slower pace? I mean, you could do it at the walk for a while until, the horse really knows the exercise and does it well, then you can try it at the trot. If the horse speeds up, she probably loses her balance a little laterally. A lot of horses are laterally very unbalanced, and then they get insecure if you shift the weight, and then they respond by rushing and leaning and that sort of thing. What you could do is modify the exercise. In the trot, you could enlarge, and then when the outside hind is down, after enlarging, half halt for a down transition, trot to walk, for example. Enlarge, half halt, walk. So it's again 3 half halts to change the gait or to stop, 2 half halts to slow down the tempo, right? And that's often a good way to explain it to the horse, and maybe use your stirrup on the outside too. So apply the half halt together with a little stirrup pressure from your toes against the stirrup iron on the outside. And then once the horse does the enlarge and walk, you can go back to staying in the trot, enlarge, slow down in the trot without down transition, and that will probably fix it, I would think. And to prepare that, you could even at the walk enlarge, half halt, stop, enlarge and stop, right? And then trot, enlarge and walk. At some point you could do trot, enlarge and halt. You can do trot halt transitions too. They're a little bit more demanding, right? The trot walk transitions would be easier. And then eventually you just do the whole thing in the trot, and when it goes well in the trot, then try it in the canter. The canter, everything is usually noticeably more difficult than at the trot initially, right? Wendy Rockwell says, is it essentially a leg yield out? Yes, exactly. It's basically a leg yield from the inside leg out to the next track, so to speak. Yeah. Kim Underwood says, I rode today and focused on channeling the energy forward through my pelvis between my elbows instead of thinking my elbows back to my pelvis. Big difference in Indy's posture and carriage. She was less on the forehand, less heavy, and felt higher in the withers and more balanced. Exactly. The side effect that I wasn't expecting was that I found I could relax the muscle tone in my arms and hands so that my muscles were still engaged but not clenched and tense. Super improvement in my ability to sit the trot. Very happy. Yeah, that's exactly what happens. That's normal. Essentially, that's what you expect, right? When you connect your pelvis and elbows and you create that channel of energy, the horses will be more on the seat, which means you have to hold them less with your hands and legs. They're more balanced, so they're lighter, better self-carriage. So yeah, you can relax your arms, you can relax your legs, and you can just sit tall, keep that core muscle engagement, and then try to let go of the arms and legs, and then experiment with how much can I relax my arms and legs, so that you try to eliminate all tension from arms and legs and completely relax the muscles. Yeah. Sue Barton says, thanks for that. I will try tomorrow and let you know how it goes. Yeah, I'm curious. Okay. Maria says, do you have a video of the exercise you can show? Not right now. I think in one of our courses we have a video of it, but we don't have it here right now to show. Mit Hoppenrad says, how do I not lose forward when I ask my horse to go sideways? Well, if they lose impulsion, maybe you're asking the horse to go too steeply sideways. That's a possibility. So you can try to let the horse go more forward. It's not 90 degrees sideways. It's a little forward and out, right? So you can play with the ratio of forward to sideways, just more forward, less sideways, right? Some horses tend to use lateral movements to get behind the aids. That can happen. In that case, you enlarge, and then you don't give the half vaults because they would make the loss of impulsion worse. But instead, when the inside hind touches down, you ask the horse to go forward and push a little more. That's the third test of the inside hind. So you can go enlarge and go forward. With your seat and your knees, you ask the horse to push with the inside hind so that they go forward and sideways, not sideways and then come behind the aids. They have to stay on the aids. They have to stay on the seat, on the leg, in front of the leg. And if the horse uses lateral work to get behind you, then go a little bit sideways, shallow angle, and forward. So with the one horse that I'm riding here, I had to do that. He was like that. He had learned, I think, with other riders to get behind the aids and lateral movements, and it's a little bit his tendency anyway. So I had to do a lot of this enlarge and go, enlarge and go forward, or leg yield from the long side to the quarter line and go forward. It's basically the same thing. If you ride whole school, you're leg yielding a little from the long side to the second or third or fourth track. That's an enlarging. It's just mechanically the same thing as the enlarge on a circle. And then you can go forward if you need to, if your horse sucks back otherwise. Yeah. Jennifer says, my horse drops the left shoulder going right and struggles to be mobile through the rib cage going that way. Going left, he doesn't tend to drop the shoulder, but actually seems to overbend. I think his main source of stiffness is his rib cage bending right. Any suggestions? That could be. Usually in the hollow direction, the shoulder goes out too fast, the horse bends too much to the inside. In the stiffer direction, the haunches tend to go out too fast and the horse tends to look to the outside. Drops left shoulder going right. So going right, falls on the outside shoulder, it seems. Going left, he doesn't fall on the shoulder, but overbends. That's a little unusual configuration. To mobilize the rib cage, you can use figure eights and serpentines, anything that involves a change of the bend. And when you change the bend, you have to really work on the weight shift, right? Shift the weight into the old inside hind, and then you can swing the rib cage into the new outside, right? And then you create the new bend that way, and then back and forth. The horse learns to swing with his rib cage more and more. So Lisa says, my horse is coming above the bit in up transitions, though mostly consistent in the bridle. Otherwise, a lot of horses do that. They lose the connection to the ground with their hind legs, and they drop the back, and then they invert. The horses that we're working with here, they used to do that too. Actually, you can use this exercise in the walk to prepare the up transition. Right? It helps you create a connection to the outside hind leg. And when the half-halt through the outside hind leg goes through, then the up transition will be better, and then so you can do in the walk enlarge and halt, right? Enlarge, half-halt, like shorten the strides a little bit, and then you can allow the horse to go up into the trot. If the horse inverts in the up transitions, you also have to look at how you're asking for the up transition, because it could be that you're provoking it. Like some people shove with their seat, they push with the seat forward and the back drops and the horse sort of loses balance and then inverts and then he sort of scrambles into the trot. Some people use a lot of leg pressure and then they pinch their butt cheeks and they tighten their hamstring, and then the horse can't move his butt in his rib cage. So it's actually better if you prepare your up transitions with a little sidestepping on the circle. You can also do a little shoulder forward position where you're asking the haunches to yield a little to the outside, engage the inside hind, maybe drive the inside hind in the walk when the outside front swings forward, so that you're speeding up the inside hind, and then you can half-halt with the outside rein when the outside hind touches down. And by driving the inside hind when the outside front lifts off, you're asking the horse to lift the inside hind sooner until it's synchronized with the outside front. So they basically swing forward together. That's a diagonal step. And then when you have that, you will probably also find how the horse wants to trot, and you allow that with your seat, so that you do your driving not in the transition to the trot, but before. It's like you're flexing a spring, and then when you do the up transition, you try to relax your leg, relax your hip, go up and forward with your pelvis, so that you release that tension that you put into the spring, positive tension. You release it, and the horse goes up into the trot. So then they usually learn to use the back and stay round. Maria Sedel says, what can I do when I can't connect to all four legs due to blockages? If there is a specific leg that doesn't let the aid go through. Yeah, most horses have one of those or more than one. You can do down transitions into the four legs, of course. That makes it better. Initially, there'll be resistance when you stop into a certain leg that's just not connected at all. If it's a hind leg that's blocking you, you can try to make it more supple through sidestepping exercises, with the bend against the direction of travel. If it's a front leg that doesn't let your aid go through, you can try turning the shoulder, corners, figure eights, turns on the haunches, and that usually loosens up the shoulder area. You could also try and make that leg more supple, that doesn't let the weight go through, by stepping into it. So in the trot, you can step into it, half halt, and move the weight around though. So don't just target that one, but move the weight around and keep coming to that leg that's impermeable, right? That's blocking the aids, and then that usually helps as well. Yeah. And Carrie Nast says, I'm leasing an off-track thoroughbred whose hind legs are a good 3 inches longer than his front. He's only 5 and he can actually get quite fancy, but he tends to sweep his legs out to the side and instead of stepping underneath. Are there exercises I can do with him to help him overcome his conformational challenges? Had a great lesson the other day and was able to get him to drop his head and stretch into contact. But every few steps or so, he will sweep his legs to the outside. How can I teach him to step more underneath? That's difficult. If the horse is croup high, that makes it much more difficult for him to find his balance, right? Because he'll try to keep the hind legs extended, the croup is higher, he pushes himself onto the forehand. It's more difficult for them to find their balance. You can help him with walking, ride maybe ride serpentines and circles with voltas at the circle points, just to move the weight a little bit, from the outside pair of legs to the inside pair of legs, and a little bit back and forth, and stop into the forelegs and things like that. 5 is still young, I mean, there's a chance that he'll still grow a little bit, especially if it's a gelding. If you had a great lesson where he found his balance and became round, try to analyze, what did you do exactly? At what point in the lesson did he become round? What made the difference? What exercises were you riding, or what aids were you giving? How were you sitting? And that kind of thing, right? And yeah, and then I would use that as a starting point. And of course, it's a process, right? It's comes and goes, right? He'll lose his balance again, and then find it again, and so on. And the more you can make the hind legs supple, and get him to flex the hind legs under the body, the more consistent and better quality the rein contact will be. But that takes time to develop. And Carolyn McCoy says, if maintaining gait and propulsion is important, is it confusing to the horse to ask to slow down when asking to enlarge? Depends on the horse. If you have a horse that's rushy, then the slowing down is good. If the horse's tempo is good, not too fast, then you could modify that half halt so that it's not slowing the tempo down, but you want to feel that impulse of the hind leg go through the hind leg into the ground. So you feel a little bit of a yielding of that hip joint. You feel a softening in the hip joint as a result of your half halts, right? So then it's not a literal slowdown, but it's more like the horse squats a little bit more with that hind leg, but keeps the same tempo, right? So. And Sharon Good says, that's a great tip about the rising trot. Do not have a school only once a week when I go to a lesson, but had a good ride this morning. I can feel his hind legs coming under and try to connect my reins to my pelvis. It worked well, good. But he still pulled me most of the way, but did eventually soften in a school tomorrow. So we'll try these exercises. Yep. Yeah, it helps if you have an arena to do this. I mean, if you have a little space on the trail, you can do this on straight lines. Like you can start on one side of the trail, leg yield a little over towards the other side, and then half halt. Like if you go from the left side of the road to the right side of the road, so your leg yield from the left leg and then half halt into the right hind, and then you can go back the other way, right? You can do little zigzags. That would be a possibility. Michael says, can you provide the transcript so I can read it before I try the exercise? Lots of information here, and I think rereading would be very helpful. There should be a PDF with the explanation. I think Shanna uploaded that to the course platform probably, and you'll probably also find a link in the group. And today's transcript will be up probably tomorrow. So these live events take 24 to 48 hours to before they're completely uploaded, and in the group or in the course platform. Sam Taylor Leeton says, if you have a horse that isn't always that forward, maybe a bit slow, would you still half halt and slow after sidestepping? No, that's what I had talked about earlier. If you feel like your horse is losing power or sucking back, getting behind the aids, whatever, replace the half halt with a little bit of lengthening when the inside hind is down. So first you bring the inside hind under the body with the sidestepping, and then when it touches down, you ask for the push. So rhythmically that changes. So it's enlarge and go, right? And then for that lengthening of the stride, for the third test of the inside hind, you use the moment when the inside hind is down, and you ask every second stride, every other stride, for that inside hind to push. So if you count 6 touchdowns of the inside hind, you could push on 1, 3, and 5, or 2, 4, and 6. So it's push, be neutral, watch what happens, push again, watch what happens, push again. That prevents the horse from getting hectic, and it gives you a little bit of time to watch the reaction and then plan your next move and so on. Yeah, Callie says, can you describe what feel we should be seeking on the bit during this exercise? Well, you should feel the horse stretch into the outside contact, right? And then you should feel how your half halts create a connection to the outside hind. So hopefully the outside hind will yield a little and soften a little bit under the half halt, and then into the release, maybe the horse gets a little rounder again. You could actually also, going in the stiffer direction, follow up, enlarge, slow down, and then flex a little with the inside rein, that you feel like you're turning the skull a little to the inside. That would be a nice follow-up also. You can always add another element, right? Or you can take an element out, put another element in. It's a little bit like playing with Lego building blocks, right? So this enlarge, slow down is sort of a standard classic, combination. And if you feel like there's a little tightness in the paw still, you can then flex slightly to the inside and release, So, and flex when the inside front is on the ground, and large, slow down, and flex. It's all in the same moment of the footfall sequence. Only when you go from enlarge to go forward, you would switch the phase of the footfall sequence in which you give the aids. Yeah. Maxine says, how do you control the outside shoulder when you enlarge and the horse tries to evade by going out of the outside shoulder? Would you help a bit with the outside rein against the outside shoulder and bring the outside shoulder to the inside? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the job of your outside knee and rein to catch that shoulder and to frame it, and if necessary, slow it down or push it in a little bit. And you may have to rotate your pelvis so your outside hip comes forward more. And you may have to stretch your outside knee forward and down more. That usually helps. And possibly, release the inside rein, so you're almost counterflexing the horse slightly, and then you should be able to get control of the outside front, outside shoulder. Oh, good. Jane says, I ride a horse who has a tendency to rush. This is worse in lateral movements, where she really tries to run away from the leg. She has only just started schooling again after a break. Any suggestions? Try it very slowly at the walk, and just make that enlarging very gentle, very gradual. Maybe step and half halt with the outside stirrup and rein before enlarging and after enlarging. Or begin by leaving out the enlarge and just do a little stirrup stepping and half halting with the outside stirrup and rein. So you connect the outside legs of the horse to your weight and to the outside rein. That's a possibility. So you go step, 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 half halt, half halt, half halt, right? Just to connect the outside pair of legs more to the ground and the weight. And then when you feel like that's getting better, then you can add enlarge, slow down. And these stirrup stepping aids and half halts into the outside legs, they can always be expanded into halt transitions, right? So you can stop into a front leg or a hind leg by using the stirrup and rein on that side. Yeah, so sometimes that might be necessary to do a little bit of preparatory work in a sense. Yeah, Jennifer said, I'm actually starting to think my horse's issue is his left hind, like you were explaining that he might be a little afraid to carry the weight on it on the outside, going right. And then going right, he's comfortable to put the weight onto his right hind and have a better bend left. We'll play with the exercise tonight and see. Thanks for the insight. Yeah. Yeah, the issue you see is sometimes a domino effect symptom, and the actual cause might be somewhere else. It could be at the other end of the body, right? Or on the other side of the body. So yeah, play with it and see what happens. Yeah, Beate Jonas says, how many response time do you allow the horse when you start a new exercise before you re-ask? My mare sometimes takes a little freeze. Yeah, with this type of exercise, the horse should really respond in the stride that you're asking. If they don't, if you enlarge and nothing happens, you could tickle a little with the whip right away. It's like follow up and say, excuse you, horse, I'm talking to you, pick up that leg, move over, you know. And when they ignore the half halt, then often stopping the horse is a good way to explain. It's like it shakes the horse up, it wakes the horse up, and then you can tell the horse, I was talking to you actually. I wanted you to listen to that half halt, and by stopping, you make it clear to the horse that he was asleep, he wasn't paying attention, and then you can tune the horse with these things. So yeah, expect a response from the horse in the second that you're applying the aid. Doesn't have to be the perfect response, or doesn't even have to be the correct response, but a response. The horse has to acknowledge that you are talking to him, and he has to try and find out what you were saying, right? If he just blows you off and ignores you, that's not okay. That's rude. And it becomes a safety issue at some point sometimes. So yeah, insist on getting an answer, and with the enlarging, tickle, tickle, tickle with the whip. If he doesn't listen to the leg, with some horses you could exaggerate the weight aid, so it's almost like you're unbalancing the horse to the outside, so he has to kind of scramble to stay underneath you so he doesn't fall over, right? This would be like a bit of a rude wake-up call if you feel like me and the horse is so asleep, he's ignoring me, he's not paying attention, this is disrespectful to me, so then you say, pay attention, so quick drastic weight shift, and then they wake up, and then you can ask again nicely, right? But that would be an extreme, right? So usually it's enough if you apply your weight aid, touch them with a leg, and nothing happens. Tickle, tickle, tickle with the whip usually does the job. If you wear spurs, you can give a little press with, touch the horse and press and then release. That's a possibility too. Carolyn McCoy says there are a lot of videos posted in the Facebook page where you're going to address any of them. I haven't seen any yet because I've been working horses. I was outside. I'll look through them and see if there's anything that needs to be addressed. And Shan Patton says, hi from South Africa. Why is getting a horse on the bit harder in the canter? Is it that the horse is still too weak? I'm doing well at trot, but canter is still very crooked and stiff. Well, there you go. That's the reason why. Is there an exercise I can do at the canter that's different from walk and trot? Yeah, a good canter requires a lot more strength in the belly muscles and the hind legs than the trot and the walk. The canter is an asymmetrical gait, which makes the horse more likely to get crooked and drift out with the shoulder or in with the haunches. So to get the horse round in the canter, you need to build the strength in the walk and trot. You have to improve the straightness also at the walk and the trot, and then try to carry that with you into the canter. And in order to make the horse straighter in the canter, you can ride more angular movements. So in other words, instead of riding a circle, you could ride a diamond, where you ride straight lines from circle point to circle point, and then you try to turn the shoulder quickly and fairly sharply onto the next straight line. You can also try certain stirrup stepping exercises, like you could step into the inside front at the lowest point of the canter stride. That's the third beat when the inside front is down. You can use the outside rein together with your inside stirrup. Then you could, next canter stride, step into the outside stirrup in the first beat when the withers come up. So you're rocking the horse between the inside front and outside hind. And then in the third stride, you could step into the inside stirrup and use the outside rein when your seat gets pulled forward. So when the forehand starts to lower, the main diagonal touches down, you could really sit into the inside hind, step into it, flex, half hold with the outside rein, or flex the horse to the outside. And that has a straightening effect. It can take a while before the horse is straight enough, supple enough, strong enough to canter round and on the bit, right? But these are basically steps you will have to take to make the canter better. Sharon Good says, thank you. I do lots of exercises whilst out. He does really well on these. I think I overdo it in the school and he gets tense, which clearly doesn't help him. Nearly all my instructors tell me to keep my reins really short. But to be honest, he seems so much happier with a little bit more looseness. What's your view? Well, the rein length has to match the degree of the engagement of the hind legs and the distance between the horse's hocks and the mouth or the nose, right? When you engage the horse more and he flexes the hind legs more, you can shorten the reins a little bit. As long as the hind legs are still out behind and the horse is strung out, you won't be able to just shorten the reins because the horse will fight it. First you have to pick up the hind legs, bring the hind legs under the body so you can sit on them. And then from back to front, there's this little feedback loop. Engage the hind, sit on the hind, pick up the slack, right? Release, right? Engage the hind, sit on the hind, pick up the slack of the rein, release, and so on. And then if you go through that circle several times, the horse will be, in a more compact frame, more uphill, rounder, and so on. I did this article on a blog. You find an article called Shorten the Reins. I posted a comment actually earlier this morning or yesterday. So if you read that, you'll see a discussion of that. Yeah. Then Jeanette says, one of my horses, he's at M level, so it's third level in US, class M in German, right? Medium level in England, I think. Soon ready for higher, but we struggle a little to find balanced energy. I find that when I find my seat, he sometimes loses all energy, then takes a quarter step outside with his right hind and usually drops his back and goes off contact. Or he just slows down and tries to do pirouettes in canter instead of moving forward and he seems stuck. He's not hard. When I put my legs on, he sits even more. He has no contact in my hand. So I then tend to lift my butt from the saddle to get him moving. This was filmed on my last session. Any tips how to get him moving and light? He's super smart and sensitive. Well, it sounds like he gets behind the aids, right? And using a lower leg aid can make that worse, especially if he's bracing the rib cage and holding his breath and tightening the belly muscles. Then he will slow down more, get more behind the aids. I would check my own body if I have any kind of tightness in my glutes, my thighs, my wrists, fingers, forearms, anything that could give him an excuse to suck back, right? Any kind of blockage in my body that doesn't let the energy go through. Some horses are really sensitive to these little tensions we have in our body, and then they react in a big way to a very small amount of tension in our body. When you want him to go forward, ask more with your seat. So engage your back muscles and use your thighs and knees with a little impulse against the knee rolls of the saddle, right? The saddle portion. Just a little quick nudge that asks the hind leg that's on the ground to push more. Whereas calf aid would ask the horse to lift more. For example, sometimes horses suck back a little in the trot and they start to hover, like fake passage kind of steps. And then, if you want to ride him forward and you drive more with your leg, he'll passage even more and more and more because you're just telling him to lift his legs more, right? So if you want him out of that, to get him out of that, send him forward with your seat. Back muscles, pelvis can give a little forward nudge, thighs and knees can give a forward impulse, forward nudge, and then he should start to get out of that. And be very careful not to build up any tension or to hold any tension in your glutes, your thighs, knees, lower legs, forearms, hands, and so on. So it could be a combination of a couple of things that cause him to get behind the aids there. Pam says, joined late. Will there be a graphic of the exercise? Yeah, in the video, I showed it earlier, and there's a PDF. I think Shanna posted the link in the group. I could even, let me see if I can find that really quickly. Challenge, let me see if it's on here. Let me see if I can find that. Media. Nope. Can't find it at the moment. Just looking through these announcements, but Zoom link, no. But Sandy was watching. If Sandy is still here, you could post the link to the PDF. Because I can't find it right now. Shanna's out in the garden at the moment, watering because the so dry plants would die. She was working on the computer all day long. So anyway, so let me go back to the chat box here and see what I can find that I haven't answered yet. Let's see. Okay, I'm just trying to find where I left off. Linda Scarrett, I think it was the next one. She says, posting on the wrong diagonal blows my mind. I had so many years of trainers telling me that it is to be avoided at all costs. Well, yeah. But yeah, what happens if you post on the wrong diagonal? The horse is not going to die. He's not going to break, right? Sometimes it actually helps the horse, to balance himself better if you post on the wrong diagonal. I think this whole, posting on one diagonal comes from the military because they had to look uniform, right? And if they all post on a different diagonal, then it looks funny, right? And then looks undisciplined. So they make sure everybody posts on the same diagonal. But in training, it can be helpful to change the diagonal sometimes. You can, there are exercises around that. You can post on the inside hind 3 strides and then switch to the outside for 3 strides and then inside 3 strides, outside 3 strides, and other exercises. And that's a little bit like giving the horse a massage for his back and his hind legs. That's actually quite nice. Yeah. Jane says, I tried to get my dog to help with yesterday's homework, wasn't exactly successful. Can you imagine? That would be difficult to get the horse to hold the lunge line for you. Yeah. Kathy says, amazingly simple yet so effective. Still struggling with feel, but now at least have a sense of awareness. Yeah. So mid-hopper, I had answered that about not losing forward. But Jennifer had answered that too. Oh, Wendy Rockwell says, you explain it so well, though I've used it without having those details explained. Yeah. Yeah, it helps to have a little bit extra information about why you do it, how you do it, that sort of thing that makes it easier to do it than, if you know exactly why and how and so on. Marianne Schoenby says, when you ask something of the horse with the rein, what exactly do you do with the rein? That's a good question. So it depends a little bit on what you're asking the horse to do. If you're giving a half hold, you should just close your fingers, right? And when you have the connection from your forearm and elbow to your body, then you could let yourself sink down. So when you half hold with the rein, it always feels to me like it's my seat and my pelvic floor that actually bring the half hold through, right? And the squeezing on the rein really just adds the weight of the horse's head and neck, right? If it's my whole body that sinks down and, flexes the hind leg against the ground. If you have a horse with a bit sensitive back who drops the back and inverts when you try to sit more, then you may have to stay neutral with your seat or light, but step into the stirrup on the side where the hind leg is on the ground that you want to reach. So then it's like stirrup pressure and rein, and then it goes through the bridge of your seat, essentially, right? half hold, the weight of the head and neck goes through the bridge of your pelvis into that hind leg, and your own weight then goes through your stirrup into that outside hind leg or inside hind, depending on where you do it. And then chances are better that the horse will flex the hind leg rather than dropping the back, right? And sometimes when I flex laterally, I move my hand a little bit, sideways away to like show the way, and then stay very light with your hand. Try to feel a point of resistance in the paw, feel for the blockage, and then it's like stretching a rubber band and releasing, like stretch slowly and release quickly, stretch slowly, release quickly, right? So, but that's a different aid. That's when you try to unlock the pole. And the outside rein, in that case, when you flex with the inside rein, the outside rein has to be short enough so the horse keeps a steady connection from the shoulder to the base of the neck, so the neck doesn't kink at the base of the neck stays pretty much straight, and you're trying just to move the skull or just the top third of the neck with that little opening rein. But that's a different aid from the half hold rein. Nicole says, I have trouble in this exercise with overbending, too much leg and not enough outside rein. When the horse overbends, then your outside rein is too long, probably. Not necessarily too much leg. Could be that you have to rotate your pelvis more. It could be that you have to bring your outside hip forward, inside hip back in order to be able to slow down and frame the outside shoulder, but speed up the inside hind leg. That could be, that maybe your outside hip is too far back. And you can play with that. You can rotate your body a little bit more, a little less, and see where the best adjustment for the horse is. Could be that your outside elbow is sticking out and it doesn't have enough connection. Because there's a funny correlation between elbows sticking out and the horse's shoulders drifting. It's almost like when your elbow sticks out, you leave a gap for the shoulder of the horse, and that shoulder will drift and escape through the gap. I'm not exactly sure how that works mechanically, physically, but it's something I've observed a lot. And then when you close your elbows, the door next to the outside shoulder or whatever is closed too, and the shoulder can't push out anymore. And if the shoulder can't push out, he can't overbend, right? Shoulder drifting out and the neck overbending to the inside usually go hand in hand. And even if you don't notice the shoulder drifting, if you just see and feel the neck overbending to the inside, pay attention to the outside shoulder. I bet there is at least a little bit of slippage of the shoulder to the outside, or at least a leaning on the outside shoulder, and that helps the horse bring the head around to the inside, right? So if you get the weight off of the outside shoulder, more to the inside, the neck will become straighter too. Yeah. So, Carla Powell saying, yes, I did notice my weight was on the inside, but then I adjusted that and put it on the outside, but she still wasn't happy. So that was the early question about the horse not liking the exercise. Like I said, could be that the horse doesn't trust her outside hind leg, that she thinks it's going to snap off if she puts weight on it. I might go very slowly, walk, enlarge, and then halt into the outside pair of legs. You could even enlarge and then stop into the outside front leg first, right? Because front legs are usually a little bit less controversial. Horses are usually happier to put weight on the front legs than the hind legs. So you could enlarge and stop into the outside front a few times, then stop and then walk on or trot on and then do it again, enlarge, stop from the walk into the outside front. And then after you've done that a couple of times, stop into the outside hind leg and see how that compares. Change direction, do it the other way. And then you could do trot, enlarge, and then down transition to walk into the outside front leg. And then after a couple of repetitions, trot, walk, transition into the outside hind leg. And then, So, and then it evolves from there, right? Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you have to break the exercise down into smaller pieces, basically. So it's like you're building the horse a staircase of very tiny learning steps, so to speak. Sometimes the original exercise is like a staircase with steps that are 5 feet tall, and then you can't step, you have to climb, and then it's very tiring, and then it takes forever, right? And you may not make it after a few strides. You're tired, you can't take the next step. So if the steps are smaller, you can run up, the flight of stairs easy. And for the horse, it's like that too. You sometimes, if you do an exercise, it's like, okay, the steps of the staircase are too tall and too far apart, right? Then you make them smaller, divide them into smaller little learning steps, and then the horse figures it out. Yeah, Canter says Bingo, the hock on the weak side of the old schoolmaster I ride is usually swollen. He does not want to weight that leg. Probably has some spavin in there. The more you can get him to use his hip joints, the more he'll protect the hock. Yeah. But so there you may have to negotiate a little with him how much weight he's able and willing to support. And with that approach and retreat, that is often a good method, that you shift the weight a little back and forth, front, rear, front, or left, right, left, so you move the weight around. It's never in any one place very long. And so then you can tiptoe around that touchy leg a little bit, and then put the weight on it briefly, and then move it away again, so that that sensitive hind leg doesn't have to support the weight very long, but it has to a little bit, has to participate in the work a little bit too. Because if you don't ask that hind leg to carry any weight ever, then it's not healthy either, because then the other legs have to work overtime, and then maybe the other hock will start to take damage, or the diagonal front leg will get ring bone or something, right, or tendon injury, and so on. So, and that's a bit of a balancing act, to get that sensitive hind leg, with a swollen hock, to participate in the work as much as it can without overdoing it, because if you overdo it, then he'll injure himself. But it has to work enough so the other 3 legs don't suffer damage, right? Because now they have to pick up the slack and do the work of that hind leg that's protecting itself, right? So that can be a little difficult to find out how much can I make that hind leg work, how much do I have to make it work, so that the horse stays sound and doesn't go lame, in that leg or the others. So Hope Leeson says, I think that's definitely what I struggle with, weight aids conflicting with leg aids. That's very common, very common. I mean, anytime you feel like you have to use an awful lot of leg strength to get the horse to move over, it's fairly likely that your weight is in the wrong place. It's on the wrong side of the horse. Or the horse has poor lateral balance, and he's convinced that he's going to fall over and die if he shifts the weight to that side. That's another option. That happens frequently too, and that's something you can also address with work in hand, and get the horse to shift the weight on the ground, like pick up one hind leg, take a step forward, because he can't pick up the leg that's supporting the weight, right? In order to pick a leg up, the weight has to be on the other side of the body, which means if he was leaning on that leg that you want him to pick up, he has to shift the weight to the other side first. And that's a whole learning curve for the horse too. For some horses, it's not at all clear at first, right? So they can get a little panicky. And then, on the ground with no weight on their back, you can explain that to him very slowly and systematically. And then he just has to deal with his own body, not with the additional weight of the rider. And then gradually, it gets better and better. So there are a couple of questions we already answered in the Q&As. Alex says what you just said about the leg versus weight aid makes sense to me now, because I was always told to put weight on the inside when asking for the crossover. My horse gets visibly confused when I try that. It's just counterintuitive for me. Yeah, that's that whole discussion about whether you always sit on the inside or whether you sit in the direction of the movement, right? The German tradition kind of wants you to sit on the inside of the bend always. And in France, Spain, Portugal, the riders tend to sit, kill the fly, tend to sit on in the direction of the movement. And especially for a little bit younger horses, it makes a lot more sense if you lead the way with your weight. It's like, look, horse, I'm going over there. And then your leg says, come with me, stay underneath me. Whereas if you sit on the inside, but you want the horse to move away from your inside leg, that can get very confusing for the horse. And it could be that he's like, well, make up your mind. Where do you want me to go? Do you want me to follow your way to the inside, or do you want me to move away from your inside leg to the outside? That makes no sense, right? And then they can get flustered, or they can get angry, irritated, because they don't understand what you want. So I tend to sit in the direction of the movement. In the shoulder in, sometimes when the horse is already a little further along, you can sit on the inside hind to flex that more. Sometimes that makes sense. But with the young horses that are just learning, it usually helps to sit in the direction of travel. In case of doubt, try both versions. Like I said, you're not going to break the horse and it's not going to die, but you will find that one version will make a lot more sense to the horse, and the horse will go a lot better than with the other option. And Janet says, I can't wait to try this in my flying changes and collections to gather energy out from the collections and lateral movements. Yep. Yeah. Oh, Jane says, thank you for the extra ideas for horses who rush. Heather Parnham Wilson says, glad you suggested roundness in youngsters, as I have always worried that it may develop kissing spines, etc., if they're allowed to be ridden hollow, not in a good posture for too long. Yeah, it's a balancing act a little bit. Of course, you can't expect the young horse to be through the back and on the bit like an FEI level horse, right? They won't be that consistent. Everything fluctuates a little, so they'll wobble, and sometimes they'll be above the bit and then they'll be round again. But I would always encourage them to find their balance, be straight, lift the back, relax the paw, and so on. If you allow the horse to be inverted for too long, then the horses develop the wrong habits. They develop the wrong muscles. It creates wear and tear in various places, the legs, the tendons, joints, back, and they develop the idea that this is the way it has to be. They think that this is what you want, upside down, right? Back dropped and inverted. They think this is how we do it. This is how correct. Because horses don't know what's right or wrong. They can't read our books, unfortunately, right? Or they refuse to, at least. And so they go by statistics. Well, whatever you let the horse do the majority of the time becomes defined as correct by the horse. And then it could even be that because he's good-natured and he wants to make you happy, he tries really hard to do more of that, whatever you have encouraged or allowed, or tolerated. And then it could be that he's trying extra hard to drop the back and invert, because, well, clearly that's what you want, right? Otherwise, if you didn't want it, you would not let me do that, right? So so that there is that aspect too. Try to show the horse what you want, and sometimes you have to ignore things when they go wrong, but you may have to then praise the horse when it goes right, and then try to help him get out of the counterproductive posture, right, into the correct posture, so to speak. So it's a little bit of this, dance with the horse, where you try to encourage the right thing, try to get him away from the wrong thing, and so it's a little bit of a negotiation process and helping process. Hey, Vicky Rowain says, I used this when teaching today. It was a huge improvement for client who previously struggled getting correct lead. Awesome. I'm glad you did that. Yeah, for the canter, correct canter depart, it's almost fail safe. It's almost foolproof, unless you have a horse who's been cantering on the wrong lead for 10 years, you know, and it has that in his head that that's the way we do it. For most horses, this enlarge and stop, enlarge and stop, enlarge, slow down and canter. This works almost always, you know. In Cynthia cases, I'll be focusing on the results, half halting into the outside hind with my off the track thoroughbred mare. She's tight in the left hip and paw. She likes to clench her left jaw. I do a lot of jaw paw mobilizations, make her aware of the position of the base of the neck, but feel like addressing it from the hind end will help keep the base of her neck up and straight. I'm still doing in-hand work with her, so she has full time to process this without my weight. Yeah, it's good to show horses certain things on the ground. What you probably have to do a little bit is that you alternate between, you know, suppling, loosening the paw and jaw with little flexions, and then doing something to mobilize the hind legs and loosen the hind legs, right? And then address the paw, address the hind legs. And every time you release the paw, you probably find that the hind legs are working better. Every time you mobilize the hind legs laterally or vertically with transitions, you'll feel the paw release a little bit more. And so by kind of jumping back and forth, you can often speed up the process. You know. Linda Scarrett says, my horse falls out through his left shoulder on the right rein. I try to stop his shoulder with the rein, but I don't seem to be able to catch the shoulder. What can I do to help him? First thing I would do is turn my pelvis more, outside hip more forward, outside knee nudges when the outside front goes forward. You can take the whip in the outside hand, touch the shoulder a little bit, and direct it to the inside. You can counter flex a little with the outside rein. You could ask the shoulders to come in, like, you know, you're going from his shoulders out to a slight shoulder in position. You can turn, you know, basically ride a volte or a square. Like if you're on a circle, you could easily ride a volte, which makes you turn the outside shoulder more and take control over the outside shoulder. If you're riding straight lines, you could also ride a square, right? You turn 90 degrees sharply, go straight. Like if you're on the long side, turn 90 degrees. Now you're parallel with the short side. Go a few strides, turn 90 degrees. Then you're parallel with the long side, turn 90 degrees again, you know, and then you come back to the long side where you were, and yeah, go straight on the long side. And then when you feel like the shoulder is drifting, ride another square. If you were on a circle and you feel like you have a really hard time controlling the outside shoulder, ride a diamond, you know. So in other words, instead of riding a curved line from circle point to circle point, ride a straight line from one circle point to the next, and ride corners. Turn the shoulders in 3 strides of the inside hind, or ride these turns as quarter pirouettes in 2 strides of the inside hind. Then it's a very sharp turn, and that gets the horse's attention. Then you have to kind of address that outside shoulder every time you turn. So those would be all good ways of addressing that. So Teresa Washburn says, please explain more about horse exercise, enlarge, slow down, and class material, the how part, how to support your weight aid with your inside leg when the horse's inside hind leg is in the air. Don't understand. Well, when the inside hind is in the air, the rib cage swings out. Accentuate that swinging with your pelvis. So essentially, you're transferring your weight more to the outside half of the horse's body, right? The outside hind is down, the outside front is up. So in a way, as you swing out, your weight already goes a little towards the outside hind. And your inside leg is attached to your pelvis. So if your pelvis swings to the outside, you may feel that your entire inside leg automatically comes more into contact with the horse. And then you could increase that by giving a little nudge, a little impulse with your inner thigh, inner calf, basically asking the horse to yield away from that leg and to follow your weight. You ask the horse to step over, you know, and step under your weight, you know. So if you think of beginning the way, all aids with your pelvis, or the area around your pelvis and lumbar spine, and you think of legs as appendages to the pelvis, like if you move your pelvis a little this way, then this leg hanging down will come into more contact, and this leg will create a gap, right? So if you move your pelvis, over here, this leg will create space. This leg will create an impulse. The horse moves away from that impulse and fills the space, fills the opening over here, right? So horses tend to go, the path of the least resistance, like water, like electricity, and so on. So if you create a little opening on one side and create an impulse on the other side, the horse will move away from the impulse and fill the space that you created. And if you don't create a space, but you press from here, where's the horse going to go, right? That can be also an issue when horses don't move over. I mean, it could be that your weight is in the wrong place, but it could also be that your outside leg is gripping and now your inside leg is driving and saying, step over there. And then the horse is like, well, where do you want me to go? There's no room here because that leg is blocking me, right? So you may have to breathe with that leg, create a little opening, a space, and then ask the horse to fill that opening, right? So that could play a role too, when the horse doesn't seem to want to go over there, right? Yeah, good. Katie McGatches says, I sometimes use this exercise in preparation for flying change in the canter. How many steps of leg yield, if any, would you suggest I ask before I ask for the change at X? You can use that exercise for the flying change, but then you enlarge from the old outside leg from the new inside, right? Because you have to shift the weight onto the new outside hind. You have to create the new bend, and then you can move the hips of the horse in the new direction. How many strides it takes depends a little bit on how balanced the horse is and how quick he is on his feet, I would give him 2-3 strides for the enlarge, and then connect to that new outside hind with your stirrup, your seat bone, little half halt, and then move over. Before you ride the flying change, it makes sense to practice that mechanical sequence at the walk and the trot. Just so you get your timing right and the horse gets into the groove and knows what you're doing, knows what you want to do. Ride it at the walk with a little bit of this haunches in the new direction helps, and then trot, same thing, and then trot, move over with change the bend, move your hips a little in the new direction, and then canter. And then, when that's easy, then same thing in the canter. You come on that whatever line you've chosen, move away from the outside leg and shift the weight to the inside, establish the new bend, move the croup in the new direction. So it's very systematic, one thing at a time, That's for horses who are not confirmed in flying changes. Once they know what they're doing, it gets easier, right? And you need less preparation. But when the flying change is still relatively new, then you have to be very systematic, very methodical, that the horse totally understands. Shift the weight, change the bend, move the pelvis, and so on. So let's see here. When you walk horses, can you explain stirrup stepping a bit? That is a longer lecture, but it's essentially a weight aid. You apply a tiny bit of pressure from your toes onto the stirrup iron, and your weight then flows into whichever leg is on the ground on that side at that moment. We have we did some live events on that, and it's a bonus material in the courses. It comes up in every course. But yeah, the gist of it is weight aid, just a tiny little bit of pressure. Sometimes it's really just a thought, and your weight flows into and through the leg of the horse that's on the ground on that side of the body at that moment when you're applying the pressure. So Beth Brown said, I tried yesterday's homework on a big bouncy ball to simulate riding a horse. Such great illustration. the pelvis elbow connection worked so much better. I was able to provide a lot more resistance to the pulling of the horse hubby. That's awesome. Yeah, it's great. Once you feel it, on the ground like that, you can transfer to the horse, and your seat will become a lot more effective, as a result. And Michelle King says, I know I can feel what the legs are doing as I know which diagonal I'm on without having to look. I know what lead the horse will be on as he uses the outside hind to start. However, as soon as I try to think of doing something like stirrup stepping or half halting on a certain leg, the conscious brain seems to override my feel, and I struggle to do it. Have you found that happening at any time? Not so much, but I don't think I was ever that much of an intuitive writer. I had to learn to be an intuitive writer. So for me, everything started with analyzing things and thinking them through, and then teaching myself the feel. So I didn't run into that. But I think people who are used to writing completely by feel and without really thinking about the mechanics, they run into that issue. Once they start thinking about it, it all falls apart and they can't do anything anymore. That actually reminds me of a story. Yehudi Menuhin, who was a really famous violinist, in the 60s, 70s, 80s. He was a super talented child, played really well, became professional very early. But at some point, even, the greatest wunderkind has to take lessons and get serious and study, and practice. And once he started to really think about what he was doing and how he was doing it, he fell apart. And if he felt like, I'm a total beginner, I can't play anymore, I can't do anything, right? And then he had to work through that and really work on the intellectual side and really become consciously aware of what he was doing, how he was doing it. And then he soared again. Then he became a world-class violinist as a result. And I think in writing, you find that too. The people who've always written completely by feel without ever really thinking much about which leg is where, what am I doing really, they are successful to a point with talent and just sheer feel, right? But they probably also will stagnate at some point. And if they want to get beyond that, they have to integrate that whole conscious awareness analysis, part into it. And then initially it will often feel like you're getting worse, like you can't write anymore, because, now that you're starting to think about it, it's like you're interrupting the feel, but at the same, you have to integrate both in a way. And it's a hard period that you have to go through in a way, but it'll be worth it, right? Once you've integrated the feel and the understanding and the observation and, the analysis, then that'll make you all the more powerful as a writer. Okay, and Megan says, sorry, I missed how you changed the weight between front to rear to front on the same side, so accept small weight on the rear. That's just stirrup stepping. You put a little weight on the stirrup and the front leg is down. Then next step, you put a little bit of weight on the stirrup when the hind leg is on the ground. And then again, when the front leg is on the ground. So you can rock the horse, front, rear, front, rear, rear, front, rear. Any of those will work, right? You can make any combination, anything you like, Cynthia says the wacky talk to text is almost as interesting as the lesson. I know, it's pretty funny sometimes what comes up there. It's something completely different from what I'm saying. Yeah. So Sharon Gallagher says, I find this exercise so helpful too, especially if I half hold and make sure the shoulders realign on the circle and ask a little forward on the line of travel. My horse gets fluffy. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can always add another thing, right? You could do enlarge, slow down, and push, enlarge, slow down, and flex, right? Enlarge, slow down, and canter. I mean, that's the thing, is it's really like playing with Legos. It's like, oh, here's another piece I could add on, and here's another piece I could add on. And then it takes on a life of its own sometimes, because you get these ideas as you write. It's like, oh, it would make sense to add this, and oh, it would make sense to add that. Or, maybe I'm not really happy with the way this feels. Let me take out this piece, but put in another piece, like enlarge, go forward, rather than enlarge, slow down, things like that. So in that sense, there is really no right or wrong version or combination or sequence. It's really playing with Legos, and you will find that some of these combinations have a better effect on your horse than others. Just pay attention to those, try to remember them. Do more of the combinations that help your horse and make him feel better, and avoid the ones that make him feel worse, But maybe try them in 6 months, because things change, right? Something that makes the horse worse today could make him feel better in 6 months, and vice versa, right? And Delane writes, isn't one of the courses you had to suggest as an exercise that involved halt on the circle line before X full pass out, or enlarge only 1 or 2 steps, then continue on the circle. And eventually you had us remove the halt, enlarge while in the gate, and gradually progress to this first test, 1 horse's width. Then eventually, just in the mind, half halt, side pass, got the direction, thinking that direction. That definitely helped us when we started. Yeah. So if the horse really struggles with the enlarging, you could do a down transition and then move him over at the halt. It gives him more time. If you stop, the horse has more time to feel, okay, where are my legs? And then you can see the wheels turning. It's like, okay, which leg do you want me to use? Where do you want me to put it? And where do I support myself so I don't fall down, right? Because if you ask the horse to pick up the leg that's supporting the weight, then the horse's first instinct will be, no, I'm not going to do it. I'll fall down and die. Are you crazy? And then you have to, move a little bit, try to get the horse's rib cage and body to move first, and then the legs will follow, right? And that sort of thing. Yeah, so sometimes you have to break things down into smaller learning steps, build little bridges for the horse so things make sense, give him time to think and to organize his body. Some horses take a little while. They have to really think it through, and then they move very gradually, right? And if you try to speed that up, you scare them, and then they fight, and because they think you're trying to kill them. So, but yeah, if you feel like your horse needs a little bit more, break down into smaller learning steps, definitely do that, right? Cody Meyer says, I will try the exercise tomorrow. Quite curious how my pony will manage. Try on the long rein riding will be Sunday, I think. Yeah, you can do it at the long rein too. When you're long reining, it's usually helpful to walk behind the horse. You might even walk slightly off to the outside and then take the inside rein down, so it runs horizontal along the rib cage. And then the outside rein can move out, make a little space, and then the inside rein can move the horse out when the inside hind is in the air. You can also use your whip horizontal in the inside hand. So the outside rein makes a little space, the inside rein and whip ask the horse move out into the space, and then the outside rein can half halt when the outside hind leg touches down. You could also run the outside rein on top of the outside half of the croup. So then there is already a little space on the outside. The inside rein moves over, and then when the outside hind is down for the half halt, take your outside hand and press down a little, half halt. So you can tell the horse lower that hip by pressing down on it a little bit. So yeah, it works beautifully at the long rein. And you could use it if you want to canter at the all right. Let's go. So Karen Yu says, my horse tends to drop behind a bit. I try to push forward, and I'm working on strengthening the legs and pushing more from behind on the ground in a cover sound. What might help? Yeah, the horse gets behind a bit. Usually the croup is up, and the hind legs may not be under the body enough. That's a common thing. If you do exercises where the horse has to move left and right a little bit, that will very often bring the head up. So you could stop and do a 90-degree turn on the forehand in motion and 90 degrees in the other direction. So a croup in, croup out, and walk on. That often brings the head straight up, right? Or stop and do a 90-degree turn on the haunches. So move the shoulders in, move the shoulders out, because that involves weight shifts, and that usually brings the head and neck up. You can try little zigzags, leg yield in a few strides, leg yield out a few strides, not very far, right? Just from the first track to the second or third track and back out. That very often helps. Halting and then just taking one step straight forward. Ask the inside hind, lift up, take a step forward, and then all four legs should take a step, halt again, and then again, inside hind begins, all four legs move, halt, and that usually brings the head and neck up to these stop and go exercises. Yeah. Riding a series of turns, 90-degree turn, go 10 meters, turn 90 degrees the other way, go 10 meters, 90 degrees the other way, and so on. That can also help to bring the head and neck up. And hope flies. Hope Leeson says your comments on my experience and question were really helpful and validate what I've been focusing on to adjust my weight imbalance due to scoliosis. I try to be aware of that at all times, feeling my weight on the horse's outside hip and lengthening my outside leg and bringing it back a bit farther than it wants to be. I recently realized that I have also not been turning my hips equally when asking for bends to the left. And today, after doing this exercise, realized that stiffness in my left shoulder has led to unequal use of the rein aids. Thank you for the homework. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, absolutely. That's good. Good awareness practice, right? Yeah. That's Brown says, what's the difference between using your calf as a driving aid and clapping down the gait? Is it just the duration or is it different leg pressure or placement? Yeah, a quick nudge with the calf is a driving aid, has an invigorating effect. A longer sustained calf aid can be used as part of a down transition. If you close your legs from your hip joints down to your ankles, hug and hold, that can become part of a half halt, and it tends to stop the horse. Some horses don't like lower leg pressure. They just hold their breath and push against it, and then they suck back. Then there is also a slightly different placement of the leg, right? If you want to drive forward with your leg, you're close to the girth. Back, in the old days, we learned that the front of your boot has to be flush with the back of the girth when it's the inside leg that drives forward. And when you want to drive sideways, you move your lower leg on the inside or a little bit farther back. And then the framing outside leg that's there to guard the outside hind and prevent it from swinging out. That's even farther back, so 1 to 2 hands breadths behind the girth. That was the old rule, right? Of course, in practice, it all depends a little bit on how the horse's rib cage is shaped, because you want to be able to feel the horse with your calf. So you may have to have your lower leg a little farther back sometimes, because right at the girth, there may be no horse, right? And then your lower leg would be hanging in the air and not able to communicate with the horse, and then that wouldn't work. So you have to bring your lower leg back enough that you can touch the horse, that you can feel the horse. Katarina Hall says, Hafford, please explain again how to do it. It's very effective to give a little pressure on the stirrup on the side where the hind leg is down that you try to half hold into. Give a little squeeze with your rein. You can also just stop your pelvis and sink down with your pelvis. So you can really do a combination. Sometimes it's enough just to stop the pelvis or slow down the pelvis, emphasize the downward movement in the horse's back. That can be enough. You can use just the stirrup to slow the hind leg down. You can use the rein pressure, and you can do combinations, right? Stirrup and rein and seat and stirrup, or combination of all three. And there's a blog article actually on that as well. Because everybody talks about half halts, but nobody explains them, right? So I wrote something a few years ago about the what, why, how, basically, of half halts. And yeah, if you want to look at that, it's all explained in detail there. And here, Agneta says, in posting trot, one sits on the same hind leg when it's on the ground. The inside, I think, yeah, typically, you sit down when the inside hind is down. She says, how do you influence the other when you're in the rising phase? You can either sit the trot for a couple of strides. That's what Carl Mikolka always had his students do. Like if you're in the rising trot and the correct diagonal, and you do the enlarge, slow down, you would actually have to sit down on the wrong diagonal, so to speak. So he made people just sit the trot for these 5 sit downs, so to speak. You had to count it out and everything. Or you could change diagonals. You could post in the wrong diagonal too, right? That's a possibility. You can also, of course, try to apply this stirrup pressure in the outside stirrup and the half hold on the outside rein when you're rising. But that may not be as effective, because your body weight is coming out of the saddle, and you want to use your body weight to flex the hind leg. So it makes more sense when your body weight goes down in the moment of the half hold. But you can experiment with all of those, right? Sit the trot, change the diagonal, or try to half hold as you're rising and see which version works better for you on the horse. And Sharon Gallagher says, is it okay to rebalance, to half hold, to rebalance, and then gradually ask for more activity with a horse that needs a little more impulsion? In other words, still use the half hold and ask for a little more. Oh, absolutely. That's a very good technique. Actually, you can, slow down and with a half hold, and then immediately activate with your leg or with the whip, and then you create this flexion and the bounce back. So you create a much more dynamic trot or canter afterwards, and the horse will puff up more, when you do that. Roll Wellmaker says, on day 0, I was trying to memorize all this and was feeling I'd never get it. Now I'm getting some understanding and less need of memorizing, as it makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, you'll see it. It'll make sense when you write it, when you practice it. And then there's a method to the madness. There's a logic behind it. And when you study the theory and then you practice it and you feel the horse's reaction to what you're doing, you see the logic in it more and more. My glass. So let me check the Q&As. Romel Makers says, double reins to cavesson attached center or one hold down, which rein on top for holding? Well, when you have reins on the cavesson, you need a cavesson with the 3 rings, right? So your reins attached to the left and right ring of the cavesson, because you want to be able to flex with it. And you can hold them in your hands in different ways. I tend to like the Phyllis way of holding the rein, so I would use the cavesson rein here on top, and usually on top of the index finger, and put your thumb on top, and then the snaffle rein can be where it normally is between little finger and ring finger. It can go underneath the ring finger too, underneath the little finger too, and then you can differentiate cavesson and snaffle rein, or curb rein if you ride with cavesson and curb like the old masters. Same thing. But it's good to be able to differentiate the 2 bridles, essentially. Maria says, my horse has just been diagnosed with wear and tear in both stifles. If I try this exercise with him, is there anything in particular I should think of? He's only 8. I've never heard of wear and tear in stifles, because the stifles are such big, powerful joints, and there's such big muscles around it that I find that a little hard to believe. I mean, some horses have weak stifles, by nature, or they have a little bit loose ligaments, tendons around the stifles. But yeah, when you ride it, I mean, don't exaggerate the sideways movement too much. If you make it a gentle forward and out, I think he'll be fine. If you don't push sideways too aggressively, just forward and sideways, I think then, he should be fine. And chances of injury are extremely low then. Kosha says, you mentioned to firstly teach the horse in hand on the ground, the weight shifting to specific, like how technically do you teach that? Well, you can teach the horse to shift the weight by moving sideways, for example. I mean, you could very simply halt the horse on the ground somewhere in the middle of the arena where you have room, and just could stand in front of him, even have lunge whip or work in hand whip horizontally, and then you can gently nudge him over, ask him to move a little sideways, like you can move, like in a turn on the forehand around you, for example. That's usually not very difficult to get. Just give him time, and he'll move over probably very, very soon. And stopping into or shifting the weight into a specific leg, I would go whole school at the walk. And, I walk next to the shoulder, have one rein in each hand. And then when the outside front is on the ground, use the outside rein, half fold, stop. So when the outside front touches down, give a half fold, and do that in 3 consecutive strides. And with a third stride, with your third half fold, you stop the horse, right? And then walk on, choose the next leg, outside hind leg, same thing, half fold, stop, walk on, then stop into the inside front with the inside rein, and then eventually stop into the inside hind leg with the inside rein. So they learn gradually, and systematically, that there are these connections between the reins and the legs, and that there are connections from the legs to the ground, or from the weight to the ground that goes through the leg, and so on. And Francis Brown says, my horse resents being asked to canter unless the frame is very long. Better to wait till she's strong enough to canter correctly. Yeah, it depends a little bit on how good the natural canter is, how old the horse is, how advanced the horse is under saddle. Could be that it's still a little early. Of course, you could canter a little bit at the lunge line, or double lunge line would be good. And at the double lunge line, you can influence the balance a little better. Of course, if the horse is very unbalanced, that the lunge line just sort of runs around, then I wouldn't do it. Then it's not going to help. And otherwise, the walk and trot work improves the canter. The lateral movements, transitions, and so on, that give the horse the balance and the suppleness, and also the strength in the core muscles and hind legs that they need to canter well. Where she said, saddled my 18-year-old school horse today and concentrated on a relaxed seat, good elbow and pelvis connection, got his ears interested, very nice, flexed haunches, carrying us nicely. We'll surprise him with more of your great exercises to freshen up our relationship. That's awesome. That's great. Very good. And Beth Brown says, thank you. You answered my question regarding neck pressure. Colin King says, I found sitting on the wrong diagonal helped me time the half folds better and enlarge, then went back to the correct diagonal. The exercise highlighted Albert's way of going, which is to load his inside front leg. Exactly. And in a case where the horse likes to lean on the inside shoulder, posting on the wrong diagonal helps, because you can transfer the weight into the outside hind as you sit down. That it's also something that works with green horses well, that you post on the wrong diagonal, suddenly they feel a lot more stable on your circle, they start bending. Whereas if you post on the correct diagonal, it might just overload the inside half of the body, and especially the inside shoulder too, So very good. I'm glad it worked. Carla Powell says, thank you for your invaluable help. Every day I learn more and more. Really enjoyed the Enlarge slowdown with my mare Dante yesterday. It was awesome. With Capriola, she needs more time to learn about using her hind legs better with my new knowledge. Another thing you can try, since we were talking about the combinations and expanding things after Enlarge slowdown, you could also ride haunches in, for example, because after waiting and flexing the outside hind, you can let that bounce off the ground and then quickly grab it and move it over. That is often a very effective way to create more mobility in the hind legs laterally and to create haunches in position. And if the horse can't keep the bend to the inside, then it becomes a counter shoulder in or a leg yield. Doesn't matter initially. It's just initially you just want more mobility of the pelvis, and then you can refine it into an actual haunches in over time. Oh, Julia says, I can't believe how much time you're giving to this, Thomas. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, we always do that. We try to have these challenges that are free because not everybody can afford a course, right? And so we want to give useful information to everybody, also the people who can't afford a course at the moment. And so I'm happy to do it, and hopefully it helps and gives you a few more pieces to the puzzle and connects a few more dots. Wendy Opera says, thanks for the great session today. I have to leave to move 200 bales of hay. Looking forward to reviewing the recording again. Yeah, and I just seeing that we've already been at it for more than 2 hours, and I know there are always more and more questions. See, some people are saying goodbye. Yeah, we should wrap this up. Close to 10:30 p.m. here. We'll do this again tomorrow. I think tomorrow we have Catherine McCrum with us, our Feldenkrais teacher. She'll teach a lesson, or we'll have a pre-recorded one. I can't remember now if it'll be a live lesson or a recorded one, but these are always extremely helpful. These Feldenkrais lessons have been such a hit that we've incorporated them in all our courses because it's the other side of the coin, right? Well, we tend to focus very much on horse gymnastics as trainers, but there's the whole rider seat issue too, especially with rein contact issues. And so Feldenkrais really fills in a lot of blanks, so to speak, and makes everything a lot more effective. Jeanette says, love these sessions when you talk in general. It explains my problems. I think my horses follow my elbows. I've always felt that it's me. The problem starts with, and they are. So we can't wait to work on them. Yeah, very good. Oh, Wendy Rockwell says, could listen for hours. You're so full of knowledge. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad if it helps. I'm glad if it makes sense. I'm glad if it helps you connect dots. Sometimes, you may get a sort of the missing piece of information and you're like, oh, that's what my trainer was always saying. That's what they wanted me to do. So, yeah, very good. Very good. Katie says, I really appreciate your time and patience with answering all the questions. So much good information. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, let's end it here. And yeah, we'll see you tomorrow, same time. And we'll chat more, answer more questions, talk about the course that's coming up where we go into all these issues in much more detail. And there's a lot more theory, a lot more mental images, a lot more practical exercises in the course. So yeah, thank you. And